بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, last week we finished this book Khulassatu Ta'azim al-Ilm, the summary of the glorification of knowledge. Alhamdulillah, this is the first book in the syllabus that we started and we have completed. And it's in the science of adab, the etiquettes of a student of knowledge. Because a student of knowledge who is striving to attain some of the inheritance of the Prophets, والسلام, then he must tread upon that path with the etiquettes which befit a seeker of that knowledge. And these etiquettes, in other words, teach us how to basically seek sacred Islamic knowledge. And therefore, this first book, Khulassatu Ta'azim al-Ilm, is a small, concise, summarized book mentioning 20 principles in how a person can seek knowledge. And Alhamdulillah, we finish a study of this book in 7 lessons. 7, right? Yeah. And next week, you have an exam on this book, bi'idhnillah. So today's lesson is going to be a quick revision session of the whole book. Now we can't go into all of the details, so I'll try to mention the main points, and some of the points I won't explain. I'll just say that there's this issue and there's this many points in this issue, and revise that and move on. Just so that you know what are some of the main issues that need to be focused upon. And if I don't mention something today, maybe I forget, maybe I look over, maybe there's not enough time. It doesn't mean that it may not come up in the exam. Revise everything, inshallah. Especially each principle, the dalil for each principle, the explanation of each principle, and any extra information or details which might be required regarding each principle. So for example, in one of the principles we mentioned 4 ways in how the Islamic sciences are intertwined and how they overlap and how they are linked. Now that isn't even in the book. That's something I added, which was extra, but that's something important that you need to go over and so on. As for, if the author makes a point and he mentions 5 different, let's say, aqwal of the ulama, for example, you don't need to know all 5. Okay, so just the main points, that's what you need to know. I'm not going to be testing you on, very minute statements like bil adabi tafham al-ilm, through knowledge through etiquette you will understand knowledge. Who said that? I'm not going to ask you, details like that. Yusuf ibn Hussein, but I'm not going to ask you that. So, from the beginning, in the first lesson, we firstly took the virtues of seeking knowledge, which shows us the importance of this path, and inshallah motivated us to tread upon this path. Then after that, we took another question, which is how do we seek knowledge? So now that we are motivated and we know how to seek knowledge, we are motivated and we want to seek knowledge, the next question is, okay, how do we seek this knowledge? And the summarized answer is that we follow the path of the ulama before us, and we follow them in their methodology, because everything has a path and seeking knowledge has a path. So we look at the ulama and the path that they treaded upon, and that path is these etiquettes that we are studying. And then we talked about the importance of etiquettes, and we split this importance into 2 parts. Firstly, the importance of etiquettes in Islam generally, and importance for every single Muslim to beautify himself with the best of mannerisms. And there were 8 points that I believe I sent as well in the group. And then after that, we mentioned the second part, which is the importance of etiquettes for a student of knowledge. So it's generally important for every single Muslim, but it's even more important for a student of knowledge. And then I summarized all of the etiquettes into 6. So all of these etiquettes that we talk about of a student of knowledge, they can be split into 6 rights mentioned by Shaykh Haytham Sarhan Hafidahullah, which is the rights upon the student himself, the right upon his teachers or for his teachers, the rights for the place that he is studying, for his classmates, for his books, and for the knowledge itself. And inshallah, Some of these we'll take in detail, inshallah, the next Usul al-Thalatha lesson, bismillah. And by the way, before I forget, this week's Usul al-Thalatha lesson, we're not going to have the lesson. Instead, we have Sheikh Hafiz Muhammad Sharif, Hafidhullah, who's a muhaddith, scholar of hadith from Pakistan. He's coming, inshallah. And after Maghrib, he has a lecture. So instead of my lesson, everyone is urged to go and attend his lecture, inshallah. We'll continue the week after, bismillah. Then I mentioned some of the books of Yusuf ibn Hussein. Imran Hussein radiallahu anhu is a Sahabi. This is Yusuf ibn Hussein. It's mentioned on page 49. So then we mentioned some of the books of a student of knowledge, and we mentioned three. I mean, there are many, but we mentioned three. The first is Ta'zim al-Ilm, the book that we're studying, or we're studying the summary of it. Then Hilyatu Talib al-Ilm, the adornment of a student of knowledge, or it's translated in English as Etiquettes of a student of knowledge by Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd. And the third was Tazkirat al-Sami' wal-Mutakallim fi Adab al-Alimi wal-Muta'allim, the reminder for the listener and for the speaker in regards to the etiquettes of the scholar and student, by Ibn Jama'ah. And there were some other books that were mentioned, we went through here that you could have added on, inshallah, like Ta'lim al-Muta'allim by Zarnuji, Irshad al-Tullab by Ibn Mani', and other books they were mentioned within this book. But anyway, these were just three books so that you guys know the main books when it comes to the adab of a student of knowledge. Then we started the introduction of the author. Now the introduction of the author was summarized into 2 points. The author said that a person cannot truly attain knowledge, we talk about real beneficial knowledge, unless he glorifies knowledge. And a person the way that a person can glorify knowledge is by applying and implementing the etiquettes of a student of knowledge. And from those etiquettes are these 20 principles that the Sheikh has gathered for us here. So that's a summary of the introduction of the author. That a person cannot attain true beneficial knowledge except by glorifying knowledge. And the way we glorify knowledge is by upholding the etiquettes of a student of knowledge. And from those etiquettes are the 20 principles which are mentioned within this book. Then we also discussed another issue, which is what is beneficial knowledge. What is beneficial knowledge? And we summarize beneficial knowledge to mean two things. Firstly, in regards to the source, i.e. the source of beneficial knowledge is the Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the second is the effect of beneficial knowledge. It is that knowledge which allows you to become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So not only does it teach you about Allah, and it teaches you correctly how to worship Him, but that knowledge has to have an effect on you as well. And it causes you to become closer to Allah, fear Allah, increase in the worship of Allah, be further away from the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on. Then the first principle is regarding cleansing the vessel of knowledge, i.e. the heart. Because the heart is like the king of the body, and the rest of the limbs are the troops of the heart. And that's when the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he said that there is alawa inna fil jasadi mudghah, that verily there is a morsel of flesh within the body. إذا صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسد الجسد كله ألا وهي القلب. If that morsel of flesh is sound, then the rest of the body is sound. And if that is corrupt, then the rest of the body is corrupt, and that is the heart. And then we said that this cleansing of the heart is from doubts and desires. And the worst doubts and desires are doubts and desires regarding shirk, and then regarding innovations, and then regarding major sins, and then regarding minor sins. So if a person cleanses his heart, then the heart is a more suitable place for that knowledge to be placed, and the more dirty the heart is, then it is more unsuitable for that heart, for that knowledge to be placed within it. And then over here we spoke about beneficial knowledge, not before this chapter, at the end of this chapter. Then we moved on to the second, which is regarding sincerity and making the religion generally sincerely only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but especially when it comes to seeking knowledge, we have to make sure that our seeking of knowledge is sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is, and sincerity, we defined it as tasfiyatul qalbi min iradati ghayrillah, purifying the heart from intending other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to clean our heart from everything, and then the only thing that we place within our heart is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what allowed the pious predecessors to reach the high statuses that they did. It wasn't necessarily due to their own hard work or anything like that, but it was due to their sincerity and truthfulness with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened doors for them. As Imam Ahmad, when sincerity and truthfulness was mentioned to him, he said, بِهَذَا ارْتَفَعَ الْقُومِ. This is what allowed the people to be raised, إِلَى Sahaba radiallahu anhum. And then the Shaykh, he mentioned four principles, four foundational principles regarding sincerity. That a student of knowledge needs to uphold these four principles, or you could say he has to intend these four things when he is seeking knowledge. The first is to remove ignorance from himself, and that he become knowledgeable regarding what Allah and His Messenger ﷺ have commanded him and set down to him. A second is removing ignorance from others. Removing ignorance from others. The third is to revive the religion or give life to the religion. Because if a person does not seek knowledge, then that knowledge is lost. And fourthly is you learn that knowledge so that you can act upon that knowledge. And that is from the fruits of seeking knowledge. It's in the book. It's on page 18. Today's a revision session. Everything I'm mentioning now has already been mentioned. Either it's in the book or it's in the explanation. The four principles is in the book, page 18. And then towards the end of this chapter, the author talks about the importance of rectifying our intention, and that is something that we should always take heed of. And at the end, I also added a lot of extra ahadith regarding the importance of this subject. And then we also took the different states of an action when the action, your intention within the action is corrupted with showing off. So if you show off within a action, what's ruling on the action, we split it into three. We said if it's the asal of the amal, meaning the only reason you've done that action is to show off, then it's not accepted. And if you do that action sincerely, but afterwards you show off, then it doesn't harm the action, but you do get sin for the showing off later, except if there's man or other, you're using the action to harm someone or something like that, then it could have an effect on the action. As for within the action, then what do we say? Who remembers? No. So firstly, it depends, do you fight off shaitan or not? So if you did the action, you stood up sincerely for Allah, then the intention comes to show off. If you fight it, then that's fine, and that doesn't have an effect on your ibadah. In fact, you may get rewarded because it's from mujahada, it's from sabr and so on. But if you let shaitan win, then it won't be. Then what happens? If you let shaitan win and you start showing off, then what's the ruling on the action?
It's connected.
It depends on the type of action. Yeah, even me, I was about to say, and I realized. Okay, it depends on the type of action. If the action is fully connected action, like salah, just one fully connected action, you can't break it up, then it is nullified. If it's an action which has different parts, like you give zakah but you split it 10 different people, then the ones that you gave it sincerely are accepted, and the ones that you didn't are not accepted. Now, and we also talked about some of the ways in how a person can remove riyah. Some of the ways how a person can remove showing off. Who remembers? Do not leave an action out of fear of showing off. Dua, visiting the graves, no. Hidden actions, increasing actions when you're alone, venerating Allah, learning about Allah. Anything else? Keep constantly rectifying your intention. No. Okay, then the third principle is to gather all of one's zeal upon knowledge. How does a person do that? How does a person gather all of his motivation, his encouragement, his zeal upon seeking knowledge? By three things, all mentioned within one hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ihris ala ma yanfa'uk wasta'in billah wa la ta'jiz." Ihris ala ma yanfa'uk, strive upon that which is beneficial. I.e., have tunnel vision, work out what is beneficial with the guidance of your teacher, and you focus just on that, and be eager just upon that. وَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ, then ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you. وَلَا تَعْجِزْ, and then do not give up, do not deter from that path. Stick on that path and go to attain your objective. And then the rest of the chapter just talked about, regarding high aspirations, mentioned the story of Khatib al-Baghdadi, how he finished Bukhari once in 3 days, once in 5 days. And then also Ibn Aqil Hanbali and other stories of the ulama. And then right at the end, we mentioned some lines of poetry regarding 5 ways in how a person can have high aspirations. The poet says, وَخَمْسَةٌ عِلَاجُ ضَعْفِ الْهِمَّةِ قِرَاءَةٌ فِي سِيرِ الْأَئِمَّةِ وَذِكْرُ فَضْلِ الْعِلْمِ وَالتَّعَلُّمِ وَصُحْبَةُ الطُّلَّابِ أَهْلِ الْهِمَمِ ونقلة الملول من صلف إلى آخر فيما نفعه قد حصل لكي تعود نفسه مشتاقة وعدم التحميل فوق الطاقة. The poet says, and 5 things are the cure for weak aspirations. Number 1, reading the biographies of the Imams. 2nd, remembering the virtues of knowledge and seeking knowledge. 3rd, accompanying students that have high aspirations. Number 4, once you have finished a certain science, then if you become bored, then you move on to another science, so that you can, when you come back to that science, you have motivation again. And lastly, وَعَدَمُ التَّحْمِيلِ فَوْقَ الطَّاقَةِ, not taking more than you can bear. The 4th is exerting your zeal to the knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah. Here we talked about how the asl of Islamic knowledge is what? The Quran and Sunnah. Right? Therefore, a person should strive to learn the knowledges of the Quran and Sunnah. And these knowledges of the Quran and Sunnah are of 2 types: ulum al-ala and ulum al-ghaya. Either they are ulum al-ala, they are tools, or they are ulum al-ghaya, they are objectives. So they're the objectives, i.e. the things which the objective, the main thing that you have to learn, what's your aqidah, rulings of fiqh, and so on. Or they are tools, i.e. they are those tools and instruments which help you understand the objective, like Arabic language, like usul al-fiqh, like legal maxims, like mustalah al-hadith, like we took with Sheikh Muqbil when he came. And inshallah we'll study all of these as well, bi'idhnillah. So if you look at the Salaf as well, that's what they did. They spoke less, but they stuck to what was in the Quran and Sunnah. And the scholars that came later on, especially those that deviated, they speak a lot more, and their principles and their knowledge is far from the Quran and Sunnah. Number 5, treading the known path that leads to it. We mentioned that everything has a path, so we should tread upon that path of knowledge. And the Shaykh in here, he mentions 2 main points regarding this path. The first is that you have to memorize a comprehensive text with the most correct opinion. And we gave a number of advices regarding this. I'll mention the most important, which is that any book that you study in Islam generally should have the following characteristics. It should be that book which the scholars have praised and advised with. The author of those books should have sound aqidah. The third, it should be a book which is makhdum, serviced, i.e. many scholars have explained it, or students of knowledge have explained it, whether it's written in audio, and it's widely available, and so on. And it's the 4th is that book is the most beneficial book for you right now. So sometimes it may be beneficial book, but it's not on your level. The Fath al-Bari, the explanation of Sahih Bukhari, is an amazing book, but right now you don't need that book. Okay? And then we added a number of extra points for memorization. What do we add for memorization? Who remembers? Best version of the book. Yeah, you should have the best version of that book. So don't pick up any book and that's for any book, even a reading book, but most of memorization, because if you memorize it incorrectly, then that's going to harm you. Anything else? Sorry? So you said best edition. All that comes under. There's no mistakes in the print. That comes under best edition. Huh? We've mentioned that already. Okay, I think that was it now. Um, Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah, he said that we memorized a lot and we read, so we memorized a little and we read a lot. But we benefited more from what we memorized than what we read. What time is that? Sorry? Adhan.
Yeah, about 24, 23, something like that.
Okay, that's fine. The second point is that you take that knowledge from a beneficial and sincere teacher, that you study with a teacher. And that teacher has to have two characteristics. The first, beneficial, meaning that he is qualified. And the second, he is sincere. Sincere, meaning that he's a suitable role model, whether it's in his mannerisms, in his aqidah, in his conduct, and so on. And the second meaning of him being sincere is that he knows how to teach. So what are the two meanings of him being sincere? That he's a suitable role model in his conduct, in his mannerisms, in his aqidah. He's not teaching you, he's not got any hidden agenda, he's teaching you what you need. And secondly, that he knows how to teach. The sixth principle is giving attention to the different subjects in your search and giving precedence to the most important respectfully. So this shows, this principle is teaching us a number of things. Firstly, we have to give importance to all of the Islamic sciences, especially those connected to the Quran and Sunnah. However, with that we have to prioritize that which is the most important and most beneficial to us, and when we do tadarruj, we level up slowly within those sciences. So we don't go straight away to the biggest book that we can find. We go slowly from the smaller books, and then slowly we go higher and higher. And here I mentioned how all of the sciences are connected. Firstly, in terms of where they are derived from. They all derive from the Quran and Sunnah. And then other sciences within themselves are derived from certain similar sciences. For example, Usul al-Fiqh is taken from the Arabic language, a lot of it. And likewise other sciences like that. Second is in attainment, meaning you cannot fully understand one science without understanding another science. Hence, a person is not considered a faqih if he doesn't know the Arabic language, if he doesn't know hadith pertaining to the rulings of halal and haram, and so on. So even though it's a science of fiqh, he can't be a scholar of fiqh unless he knows the other sciences. The third is the mawdu', the subject matter. That you can have the same subject but study in different sciences, and it could be looked at in different ways depending on the science. And number four is the effect. That sometimes one science could have an effect on the rulings on another science. And then the Shaykh, he mentioned how can a person do this? He said, firstly, by giving precedence to that which is most important, and secondly, is that his intention is that he studies a summarized book in every single field. And then next principle, number 7, rush to acquisition whilst benefiting from a youthful age. So we talked here about the importance of rushing to seek knowledge, especially when you are young in age. We mentioned ayat and hadith and aqwal of the ulama regarding that. And then in the next principle, sticking to tranquility in acquiring knowledge and abandoning hastiness. So we hasten to seek knowledge, but within the journey of seeking knowledge itself, we don't skip, we don't jump steps, but rather we take everything in tadarruj, in step by step, so that we can fully comprehend and understand these different sciences. Hence, why the Quran was revealed over 23 years, it wasn't revealed in one go. And as Imam al-Zuhri said, whoever tries to take all of knowledge all at once, then he will leave him all at once. He'll go in from one ear and he'll just come out the other ear. For example, the dawrat with the ulama, right? One of the, you can say, cons of a dawra, intensive courses, is that because there's so much you're taking in, you do tend to forget a lot of it, right? You know, you think about it, how much of it do you remember, like from the point, unless you revise and you go over it, then a lot of the time you tend to forget a lot of what has been said. Why? Because you've taken too much in one go, and it's left you. But there are many other benefits from those type of dawrat as well. And a dawrah, an intensive course, has its own purpose, its own objectives, which are different to a lesson. Number 9 is having patience in acquiring knowledge and also giving that knowledge back at you when you are teaching it. Number 10 is sticking to the principles, or sticking to the mannerisms of knowledge. And these are some of the famous statements that we had mentioned, and we also mentioned we added from the asl certain things which are not from the mannerisms of student of knowledge. Shaykh Usaimi said in the asl, which I added on at the end, leaning in the presence of your shaykh, yamuddu ilayhi rijlayhi, stretching your legs out, raising your voice, answering the phone. All of these things are considered bad manners in front of your teacher. Number 11 is having muru'ah, upholding muru'ah, right? Which is doing those actions which beautifies you and staying away from those actions which dishonors you. You're answering the phone. Yeah. So staying away from those actions which dishonor you and doing those actions which honor you and establish your integrity and dignity. So student of knowledge has to preserve knowledge by acting in accordance to the mannerisms of a student of knowledge. There may be certain things which is permissible for a general person to do, but it's something which is looked down upon for a student of knowledge to do. Just like there may be certain things that youngsters do. If you saw a doctor doing the same thing, it wouldn't look right, and you say, what's he doing? Because it's not befitting for a person of that status of being a doctor to do those type of actions. So likewise, a student of knowledge. Now, page 55, so principle number 12 is choosing righteous companions. And within here, the Shaykh mentioned that we should choose that companion for virtue, i.e., that companion which will allow us to attain knowledge and get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not those companions who we're just taking worldly benefit from, or we are just entertaining ourselves with. Number 13 is exerting effort in memorizing knowledge, revising, and asking about it. So 3 things. We have to memorize, already indicated towards that. We have to revise by ourselves and with our classmates, and ask about it. If you got any questions, if you don't understand something, then ask your teacher regarding those things. Number 14, honoring the scholars and respecting them. Honoring the scholars and respecting them. And here we established, if you go back to the rights of a student of knowledge, one of them was the rights of the teacher, right? So we established within here that the scholars, they are the inheritors of the prophets. And they have been given rights. The Prophet said, لَيْسَ مِنْ أُمَّتِي مَنْ لَمْ يَجِلَّ كَبِيرَنَا وَيَرْحَمْ صَغِيرَنَا وَيَعْرِفْ لِعَالِمِنَا حَقَّهُ. He is not from my nation the one who does not respect his elders, nor have mercy upon the youngsters, nor does he acknowledge the right of the scholar. So the scholar has a number of rights, and from their rights is that you honor them and that you respect them. And then on page 64, the Shaykh mentioned a great fa'idah, which is regarding if a scholar or a teacher was to make a mistake, then there are 6 points that we should follow. Firstly, verify if that mistake actually came from him. So both, that it was him that did it and it was actually in the manner that it was explained to you. Secondly, verify that it is actually a mistake. That whatever you were told, verify that was it actually a mistake, or is it something where it's not actually a mistake, or is it something where there's room for discussion and disagreement between the scholars, right? Because if there is, let's say some of the scholars of Ahlul Sunnah say it's permissible and some say it's not permissible, then those that take the opinion that it's not permissible do not have any right Islamically to rebuke those who are taking the other opinion if they see that opinion to be that which corresponds with the Quran and Sunnah. Hence why there's a principle, لا إنكار في مسائل الاجتهاد. There is no rebuking in the issues of ijtihad. Those issues where there is valid difference of opinion and room for discussion. And verifying this mistake is the role of the well-grounded scholars. Thirdly, not to follow the sheikh in his mistake. So let's say he did something wrong, but we don't follow him. And number four, we make excuses for him. Some of the Salaf have said if you see a Muslim brother make a mistake, make 70 excuses for him. So what do you think about a scholar? Number five, advise him gently and in private, because the whole point is that you want the sheikh to come back to the truth. And number six, with all of that going on, is that you still preserve his honor, so that his high station is not squandered in the hearts of the Muslims. Principle number 15, returning the problematic affairs to its rightful people. This is also from the etiquettes, this is also from the rights of the scholars. Firstly, that we respect and honor them. And number two is that we return back to them with problematic affairs. And this is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. So if you don't know something, or there's an issue, or there's a dispute, who do we go back to? The people of knowledge. We go back to the of the ulama. Number 16, to venerate the honor the circles of knowledge and its vessels. So here the Shaykh covers two of the rights of the student of knowledge: the rights of the gatherings, i.e. the place, and secondly the books. Now, when the Shaykh talks about that, and you can read that yourself, inshallah. Number 7, to defend knowledge and protect it from harm, i.e. protect the sanctity of knowledge. And Shaykh mentions three main things here.